Hello, welcome back to another conversation with Chris. I'm here with Dana. Dana's spent years working in the cannabis and hemp industry. She's had multiple businesses. She's polyamorous. So I'm here to talk to her today about just to hear some of the stories about her experience in the industry and about her lifestyle. And how you doing, Dana?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
Okay, good to hear. So you started in the cannabis industry in Colorado in 2014. That was like the beginning of legalization. Can you tell us a little bit about what the times were like then, and a little bit about your involvement in the industry?
Sure. So plenty of people have been doing various black market things before then, and I got my start when I watched a friend doing something fantastically stupid in their living room, which was doing an open blast butane extraction. So they'd taken a 2-liter soda bottle, filled it with marijuana, and were running butane like you would refill your lighters with through the marijuana and into an open pan on the floor, which had one of those little heating elements under it. And they were smoking a joint while they were doing that. And I was like, oh my God, you're going to love your house. What is wrong with you?
Wow.
And they said, well, how else would you do it? And I said, I would do it with supercritical CO2 extraction because I'm a chemical engineer and no one was doing that yet. So made the first rig out of like a scuba tank. And I don't like marijuana. Believe me, I've tried to like it. It is not my jam.
Okay.
But I wanted people to be safer. I was an engineering consultant at the time back in 2013 and absolutely bored with my job. So I decided that this would be kind of a fun new experience. I wanted to start my own business. I was really naive about what that would take and how difficult it would be. Um, but many foolhardy people are. So I tried that. I bought a small supercritical CO2 extractor, spent about 6 months optimizing it. And then I ended up working for one of the first edibles companies in Colorado called The Growing Kitchen. And I heard about what it was like before full rec legalization, um, during the medical cannabis times where things got progressively more and more regulated, and that certainly continued once I was in the industry. More safety, more labeling, more packaging requirements, more regulatory requirements, and early on, a lot of the people that were involved were people that have been black market and trying to go legitimate, or people that really were passionate about the plant, kind of from a medicinal standpoint. Um, Not necessarily very good business people, and not necessarily people who are familiar with a heavily regulated environment. I hired some extractors who I'm sure were making very high value product in their garage. And when they found out that in the industry you do it for minimum wage and you have to have operating procedures and divulge your secrets to other people on the team, they were not thrilled.
Okay.
The was it was a learning experience for sure. I went from being a professional engineer to kind of being a production level manager, and learning a whole new regulatory framework that was just being built. But ultimately, trying to manage a brand new business for like 15 bucks an hour wasn't really working for me.
Yeah.
Uh, I went and worked at a lab for a while that was doing analytical chemistry to test for cannabis related things. So THC content, but also pesticides, microbials, residual solvents, all kinds of stuff. It was one of the early labs, RM3. And that was better, but still just like barely enough pay to survive, which continues to be a problem in the industry. Uh, if you are on the black market side and you can make it work for you, it's a way that you can earn a living, even if you uh, have a disability or you're a minority or you live in a disadvantaged place or whatever. If you're willing to take the risk, you can do it. But in the legal industry, hardly anybody makes money. And part of the reason why is because the taxes are absolutely crazy high. So then hemp was just starting up, and that was 2015. So I got involved in a hemp company, and I went through a couple different roles there. They wanted to make a new extraction technique that was only hot air. So imagine a vaporizer the size of a refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in the engineering technology for that. And then we had a lot of CBD, and the question was, well, what do you do with it? So I did a lot of demo products and built up a clientele doing custom manufacturing. And I actually still run that business to this day. That's the business that I currently own, Pink Leopard Innovations. But it wasn't enough money to support a whole team of people. So that company decided they weren't going to do that anymore. And with their permission, I kept their clients and kept manufacturing the custom products. These are like small CBD shops in town, and then some like high-end salons and spas that have their own house brand of CBD shampoo or lotion or something like that. And I do some clinical trial demos. Um, there's a lot of rules around what you can manufacture and what you can't manufacture. But on the R&D side, if it's not for public consumption, there's a lot you can do to kind of develop the texture and the flavor and the consistency, and particularly for complex things like shampoos and lotions, you got to get your emulsifiers right. So I still do some of that work. But after running that full time for 2 years, starting in January of 2020, which was excellent timing as it turns out,
Yeah.
um, back to engineering full time. So I'm an engineering project manager in carbon capture right now. So that's kind of the story arc.
All right, interesting. So yeah, if you were kind of there in the beginning days of cannabis legalization in Colorado,
Yep.
and over those years, like what are some of the, I don't know, some of the pros and cons that you felt during that time, and some of the changes you felt in the first, 4, 5, 6 years?
I definitely feel like a lot of the people who got into it early got in because they were really passionate about the plant and what it could do for people. And a lot of those guys just got destroyed financially. A lot of companies folded. A lot of them weren't necessarily good business people. And then there was kind of a second wave of investors and people that wanted to make a buck off of it. And that may be inevitable, but it was kind of a sad transition. And then the regulation got more and more intense. And I think that was a good thing. I mean, early on, you could get, you know, chocolate bars that were 1,000 milligrams per half an inch of chocolate bar, and that was just insane. And in the beginning, there was a race to be the most concentrated. And I had a friend who was an EMT at the time, and she said people would call 911 and say, I'm dead. And she'd say, well, probably not. Did you, did you eat any pot edibles?
Yeah.
Uh, and there was a lot of cannabis tourism then. It's less of a thing now. I remember a bumper sticker at the time said, Colorado, we still have mountains,
Oh yeah, okay.
because there were so many people coming to the state for it because we were one of the first places to legalize. I was involved with the legislative part of the rulemaking to some degree, and I would have to give kudos to the state of Colorado for doing that pretty well. I mean, it's a consumer good, so it makes sense that it's regulated heavily and that it's safe. Um, the taxing situation is really difficult in more ways than you would think. Most businesses get to write a lot of things off. Cannabis businesses don't get to write anything off, and it's still federally illegal. So it's a high risk area, and there's some people that made some money early on, but it turns out to be sort of a low reward area. It's kind of a race to the bottom of the cheapest weed, and it was way overproduced some seasons, which really hurt businesses.
Yeah, okay. And so during that time, obviously you must have had a lot of experience and gained a lot of knowledge through this. And then you kind of went into the hemp industry, extracting CBD using what you learned from extracting THC. Is that right? and you're still
Yep.
doing that now. Yeah. And what are some challenges in the hemp industry now? Yeah, what are some challenges you see?
So CBD very much follow the THC model. If you can do one, you can do the other. And I think it really does help some people with some things sometimes.
Hmm.
But it was also very definitely a fad.
Hmm.
And it felt the same kind of legalization pressure. So like in 2019, there was a massive crop of hemp grown all over the place, and people extracted it, and the price fell out of the bottom of the oil market. So I think in the summer of 2018, my company was selling it for $20,000 a kilo. Right now, it's about $720 a kilo.
Wow.
So
Because of
it's really hard
competition
to,
and less demand, or
competition.
what?
Uh, Overproduction was the big
Okay,
problem
yeah.
in 2000.
Yeah, yeah.
Prices are starting to go up a little bit now because on a national level, the DEA has to inspect your crop now.
Uh-huh.
You can delegate that to the states, but like last year as a test, I grew 3 hemp plants and 2 of them failed. And so I had to have someone from the state of Colorado come and witness me destroying them because they were over 0.3% THC.
Yeah,
And it's
okay.
kind of one of the harvest your plants early and test them continuously so that you catch them before they go hot. Because hemp and marijuana are the same plant.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the future of hemp is probably in the fiber side. So
Uh-huh.
hemp's used for 3 things. It's used for fiber to make rope, clothes, etc. The CBD oil, and then the grain you see in like granola bars and stuff, but it's
Uh-huh.
mostly used for animal feed. And the hemp plant actually has some cool environmental applications. It's really good at pulling heavy metals out of the soil.
Uh-huh.
So I think long term it's going to be in the fiber side. I think CBD has been kind of a fad. That being said, it does help some people. One of the clinical trials I participated in was making CBD suppositories for people that have had part of their intestinal tract removed, so they can't take it orally.
Hmm.
And for some of those patients, it had a big effect.
Yeah.
So I think it'll still be there, but there isn't like uh golden seal in every gas station, right? You can find it at the specialty herb shop stores, but it's just not a massive market.
Yeah. I also remember seeing probably a couple years ago them developing hempcrete, like blocks for building homes. I'm not sure if you've seen much of that or know much about progress related to that. Yeah.
It's going. That's definitely on the fiber side. Like I said, I think the
Yeah.
fiber side
Yeah, yeah.
is
Yeah.
the future. It's a renewable resource. It's actually a really cool fiber.
Hmm.
The biggest problem on the fiber side right now is how to get the fiber out of the stock in a good way. There's 2 ways to do it: microbially and with a lot of chemicals and solvents. You get these really long staple fibers where you can have one contiguous fiber that's 5 or 10 feet long,
Okay.
which you can't do that with like cotton or flax or silk. So it's really good for doing like carbon composite materials. Have you seen those on like car bodies or motorcycle bodies? So they're
All
using
right.
rocket engines. Yeah. So I think that's still coming. I think it's coming more slowly. But I think that we will see hemp in broader use in the future, in part because it's a much more sustainable plant to grow than something like cotton.
Yeah. And it sequesters carbon and like you say, pulls out toxic metals.
Yeah. So I think that's where the future is. It's just not as sexy and profitable as CBD, because CBD was ridiculously profitable. And you can make something for $1, $1.50 and sell it for $20. And that
Yeah, okay.
allows there to be a whole ecosystem of people that are making things and still making money off of it.
Yeah. All right. So then over the years you're dealing with that, and then it's just gotten to the point where you still have that business, but it's just not profitable enough to justify spending all your time doing that. And so now you're employed as an engineer.
Yep, pretty much. My husband does all the production work for my company,
Okay.
and got like 5 or 6 clients left, and they're all small businesses. They're all local. They can't necessarily afford to buy from some of the bigger distributors because they don't want to buy 10,000 units at once. And because I have no employees and no overhead, I can make 100 units at a time, and I'm one of the only people that can do that. So it's just a little symbiotic relationship. My husband is primarily a stay-at-home dad, and so it gives him something that he can do late at night or when the kids are asleep. It's flexible, and it's enough money with his working for my company and then my salary to keep him at home with our two young sons. So it's successful. You just have to change your definition of success.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I think success can be defined in many different ways, and it's not just about financial success. There's other ways to define it, right?
Yeah.
So well that's a good segue because you mentioned your husband and then you're also polyamorous. Can you tell me a little bit about how long you've been polyamorous, how it's been working with your relationships, any experience you have?
Yeah, so I've been doing it for about 12 years. Um, I think it's a little rocky to start for most people. Um, at that time, I was in a relationship. When I started, I was in a relationship I'd been in for 5 years, and it was fine, but it wasn't that fulfilling. And I went out to California and met somebody that had a radically different lifestyle than mine. Got involved in the Burning Man culture, and I kind of just got to thinking, like, when you meet someone, why not explore what kind of connection you can have with them?
Mm-hmm.
And in our culture, you can explore friendships, but you can't really explore romantic relationships. And there's a lot of, really hard feelings around wanting to have that kind of interaction with more than one person. If you listen to any country music, you know that the appropriate thing to do
The
is,
heartbreak. Yeah.
burn key in their car.
Yeah.
So I started my first polyamorous relationship, didn't last for super long. I would say 4 to 6 months. There were a lot of kinks to work out. And one of the things that I learned is that you need to know what you want and you need to be able to ask for what you want from somebody that can hear you. And that's kind of a big stack of ifs. That's hard.
That's a very good message. Yeah.
Um, and it has not worked out very well for a lot of people. I like to joke I'm the classic Gemini. I'm so both about everything. and so my husband, I am a high performing crazy person. I only have two settings. I have overwhelmed and bored, and I never stay bored for long. And my husband is very calm. He's super zen, very chill, and I need that. I need somebody
Uh-huh.
who slows me down, helps me smell the flowers. And I always wanted to have kids, but I also really care about having a career. So I was like, how am I going to find somebody who wants to stay at home with the kids? Like that's ideal, but I don't know how that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And happened to meet my husband, and he always wanted that. He can go to work, he will go to work, but he would much rather stay home and play with the kids. So it's
Yeah.
kind of perfect. Um, but there was this big side of me that wasn't like really fulfilled by that, and I felt myself. So I'm 41. I felt myself kind of settling into the middle age thing and not being quite as engaged. And then I met my boyfriend who is doing his postdoc in physics right now, and he is very intellectual, very academic, very curious, very focused and career driven. And so that kind of like balances the two sides of me pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say both of them are pretty nerdy, pretty analytical people. Like they definitely both have big feelings, but you say, hey, it makes sense to be able to explore whatever relationship you have with a person who arrives in your life through whatever mean, and they're both like, yeah, that sounds good. And I married my husband 6 years ago, not 10 years ago, and both of us would not have gotten married if it couldn't be an open relationship. Both of us felt that a traditional monogamy was very trapping.
Mm-hmm.
And I think both of us had had at least 15 years of long-term relationship experience before we met each other, monogamous. So we'd both kind of like done that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I guess my message is it can definitely work and it can definitely be really enriching and engaging, and it creates a bunch of really interesting economic opportunities that otherwise you wouldn't have. To have like a three or more parent family
Hmm.
is really cool. And you know, I'm a geriatric millennial
Okay.
and you know, saddled with the typical financial problems. And so just being able to have more income, have more options, I think really gives me a greater chance to enjoy my life and a greater diversity of experiences. And it gives my kids more role models and more um, chances to have economic stability than they might with a monogamous relationship. It's just bananas trying to raise kids as like a two parent situation. Financially, it's really difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And I imagine, like you say, it might not be for everyone and it might not work for everybody, but for enough people, they can probably find value in having different kinds of connections with different people because at least what I feel is it's hard to have one person satisfy all your needs. And with somebody else or other people in your life in some way, you can have that other connection and you can feel your life can be more fulfilled. And would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, definitely. And like my boyfriend lives in really different circumstances than my husband and I live in, and so I get to come to New York City and I get to hang out with a bunch of physics PhDs and do New York City things and East Coast things and absorb all of his life experience and have more grandparents and um different perspectives than I ever would have had. Like I know my husband really well and I love him a great deal. And it's kind of like doing things in parallel instead of in series. Like the more things you do at the same time, the more quickly you learn. And so I feel like I'm gaining relationship experience, but also skill like faster because I'm doing it in parallel.
Yeah.
And you
No,
can,
yeah.
by the way, I'm speaking such an engineer here. Like
No, no, no,
this
I
is a weird
understand it
way.
though. Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, it's how your brain works. It's good. Um, but yeah, like you say, it's kind of like life experience. There's a learning curve because when you go into it, I'm sure you don't have the experience, so you don't know what the feelings are going to be like. And I think you said probably at the beginning your first relationship didn't last too long. There's probably some, rocky times and of like figuring things out, and then over time with experience, you learn how to manage and you learn how to also maybe set jealousy and emotions aside if you think about it logically and think about the possible benefits. And yeah, I imagine in many cases it can be like a net positive where if you're with one partner, maybe you're lacking some things and your mood, your life might feel start to get like, a bit boring or something. But then having the different stimulation, the different relationships, that can probably be good for all relationships in an ideal scenario, right?
Well, it's confidence building too. You know, if
Yeah.
someone finds you attractive, like whatever relationship style you might be in, that's always nice. If somebody's like, "Hey, you're amazing," or "You look good at the grocery store," you're like, "Ooh, I feel good about that."
Yeah.
And instead of, "Oh my gosh, what's my partner gonna think?"
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
just accept that compliment.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like jealousy and big feelings definitely still come up. It's
Uh-huh.
just, you know, culturally we have this thing of like, oh no, that's the worst thing. And
Yeah.
then you kind of learn to ride the wave and you're like, all right, what am I afraid of here? What do I specifically need here to feel safe or to feel okay? And
Hmm.
then actually work with it instead of just say, throw the entire thing away.
Yeah. Well, I imagine it can also be good for personal growth because of the fact that you're having these feelings, these emotions, these jealousy, maybe sometimes jealousy issues, and then you can kind of internalize and ask yourself, okay, why am I having these feelings? How can I understand it better? How can I grow from this? And so on.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it works for me really well. I definitely recommend it. Um, it's not always easy to find partners. Like, I don't know. I've got good luck. I guess it just happens to happen for me.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's kind of like I hang out with really nerdy people. I think it's maybe more common to think about relationships in a logical way. Amongst Burning Man people and board game people and PhD people, and
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I've
Um,
never
for
dating app, I
if
can tell you.
sorry, continue.
I've never done the dating app thing, so I can't really tell you about that.
Yeah, okay. For anybody out there that might be interested in polyamory, is there any advice that you would give people or any knowledge? Some things maybe you wish somebody would have told you when you first started?
Yeah, I think two major places that people go wrong with it is if there's something difficult about your relationship already, adding another person to it is not going to make it better. There are some limited exceptions to that. If the partners need really different things, for example, if one partner is really kinky and one partner is not, then polyamory might help. But you have to make sure that your primary relationship is strong first. And if you or your partner really wants to cheat and you want to call it polyamory, it's not going to end well. Like you
Yeah.
have to understand what you as a couple want and need and go into it with an open mind, or it's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
There's a really cool book out there called Ethical Non-Monogamy, or I think it's called The Ethical Slut. Yeah.
Okay.
I read that early on, and it was a good introduction to it. It can mean different things to different people. Um, some people are more polysexual, so they may sleep with other people, but they don't form strong romantic bonds or emotional bonds with other people. If that's your jam, that's great. That doesn't work for me. The emotional bonding is where it's at for me.
Uh-huh.
So I guess I would say if you're talking to a person who's poly, ask them what it means to them, because it's whatever agreement they have with their partners, and it can vary wildly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, everybody's different and everybody has different backgrounds and different wants and needs, right?
Yep.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been very interesting talking to you. You've got a wealth of knowledge, a lot of life experience and everything, and that shows with your maturity. So again, yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to talk today. And is there anything else you wanted to say before we go?
No, I think that's it. Just thanks for reaching out to me. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your time in New York.
All right. Thank you.
All righty, take care.
Bye.
Bye.